Hello, Sunshine.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Did you have a nice weekend?
I did. I missed you this weekend.
I missed you too.
I was like, oh, Cindy could breathe this weekend and relax. How nice is that?
Yeah,
Oh,
I did have a nice weekend. I was able to work on the wedding budget for my daughter. It was
nice.
it was it was nice.
Oh, you
So,
got to play catch up, I'm sure. Um,
yes.
awesome. I love that.
Did you try the new recipe?
No, I'm just today.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's today. So I was gonna make it yesterday. I got lazy yesterday. So but mine is gonna be a little different than yours because I'm making it with farro.
Oh,
But I
okay.
am doing sausage. I got some fresh sage. So I'm just gonna kind of tweak and play. Like I usually use recipes as guides anyway. I don't follow them exactly, but um I'm gonna try it today.
Yeah, we do too, because I told you we substituted a lot of the stuff
Yeah,
also.
yeah. So I'm excited to make it because it's very cold here. That's good.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Hi Kim. Hi Bonnie. My
Hi,
faithful,
Kim.
my
Hi, Bonnie.
faithful crew. Look at you guys. You guys are always here. Thank you.
Oh, that's a little generous for me. I haven't been here in a month.
I just mean like, I can always count on you guys, so I appreciate that.
Yes.
So this week's hi Bonnie.
Hey, how are
Bonnie.
you? Hello. My dog was
Hello.
barking.
Do you guys have a good weekend?
Yeah, we have friends over from Washington, so he smuggled 24 meatballs into his luggage so he could make us homemade spaghetti sauce.
I saw that and
That's
that made
awesome.
me laugh out loud. Like who smuggles 24 meatballs in their suitcase? But that's cute.
Good
I,
friends
I'm
do. Good friends.
I hope they
I'm
were
s-
frozen, like
Like, I don't
something.
even know how you do that.
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, I
Hopefully they're
don't either, but
delicious.
they were delightful.
Good. So I still have to figure out I have to get the lighting right in this office somewhere, move my desk around. The lighting is terrible, so I'm really sorry. But anyway, today is on midterm investing. So I know this is not a topic that excites a lot of people, but there's a lot that Kim's like, what the hell? I've been waiting for 2 weeks for this session. Um, but midterm investing to me is kind of interesting. It's a new phenomenon among agents. It's an opportunity for an investor to actually make more money in the rental market than a long-term rental. Um, and sometimes even more than a short-term rental, depending on the type of property it is. So I personally think it's something you just need to have in your back pocket. I'm very much always in favor of giving you guys things that just include your arsenal, like tools you can have in your arsenal to talk about, more familiar with them, and then you can do more research on it along the way. But I really didn't realize how many agents across the country are using midterm investing as a house hack, like an ability to increase income for themselves. And so I'm going to talk about to you a little bit about that as well and what that looks like. Um, what do you guys know about midterm investing before I get started on my on all my jazz? Like, what do you guys know about
30 days or longer,
it? Okay.
at the shortest,
Okay.
and then it's furnished.
Good.
And
Good.
use you can use Airbnb and VRBO to do it, but there's other websites that are specifically for that.
Yes. Yep, you got it. So Kim already knows quite a bit about it, but let's just talk about versions. So typically it is going to be 30 days or longer. The sweet spot for midterm and rentals is probably about the 3 to 6 mark, right? Like 3 to 6 months. So it's typically going to be for people who are traveling on a contract assignment. Think about like your nurses during COVID. Investing was a really high demand because you had traveling nurses that needed a place to stay, but they had short-term contracts. So having to find a new Airbnb every 30 days was also difficult. So they were looking for something a little bit longer. Maybe they were on a 6-month contract or a 4-month contract. And a lot of apartments don't allow 4-month rentals or 2 or 3 month rentals. And so midterm investing kind of became a way to, allow people that need shorter term, but not the 6 month or longer available. Think too of corporate housing, think of people who are building a house, that the build time is taking longer, especially your custom builders that take 9 to 12 months. Your midterm investing is probably going to be the big help for you, just because sometimes your sellers want to go ahead and sell their house and pocket their money and hang on to that. And then their house isn't ready, so they've got to have some kind of temporary housing situation. But an Airbnb might be a little too expensive. So just think about that. We'll talk about the types of tenants and things, but typically your sweet spot's going to be between 3 and 6 months. So some advantages to midterm investing is going to be like potentially higher monthly rental income. So I think the specific, you know, it's 1.5 to 2 times more on a daily rental rate than you get for short-term investing. So if you think about, if I booked an Airbnb for a month, I might pay, $2,500. But if I booked that same rental for midterm investing for 3 months, that monthly cost might actually be $3,500, right? It just depends on the location. Don't quote me on the 1.5 to 2 times because it is going to depend on the location. It's going to depend on the amenities of the unit, if they have any. And also, I would tell you, it's going to depend on whether or not a corporation is paying the rent or a private person, right? And I say that not because we're trying to hoe over the corporations, but the corporations are usually willing to spend a little bit more money than an average Joe and Mary are, right? So if the corporation is paying the rent, sometimes they don't mind paying $3,500, but the average person might not want to pay that, right? So so they do have potential higher income. There is less turnover. So you think of Airbnb, someone only books it for 3 nights. You have to go back in there and clean it every 3 nights or every 2 nights or something like that. When you have a midterm investment tenant in there, they're in there for 3 to 6 months. So you don't have as much cleaning, as much turnover in the unit. There are typically lower vacancy rates. So you will bump from one to another. If you're smart, you're marketing and promoting your property, you'll bump from one tenant to another without a lot of vacancy in between the two. And if you do have a vacancy in between the two, because your rental rate is higher, you're still producing more income per month on the midterm rental than you would on the Airbnb that's vacant 10 days, right? You have lower operating costs typically. So again, I don't have to pay the cleaner as often because it's not, that person's not vacating as often. Maybe you don't have as much supplies. So on an Airbnb, you're replacing the coffee, the paper towels, the toilet paper, things like that. In midterm investing, you're not replacing those consumables as often. So the tenant is going to go get their own coffee. They're going to get their own toilet paper, their own paper towels, things like that. So maybe you have lower operating expenses or supply expenses. They're typically less time consuming. Again, there's not as much management involved. And remember, if you're talking to 10 Airbnb, or short-term rental potential tenants, you have to have those conversations over and over and over again, versus I might place one tenant and that tenant's there for 6 months. I only have to have that conversation once, right? There typically are fewer regulations with midterm investments. So remember, your Airbnbs are coming down hard. The municipalities are being lobbied by all of the hotel lobbyists, right? And so they're trying to get all of the rules and regulations related to short-term renting changed, because that doesn't benefit them, right? The hotel industry is losing money every time you rent an Airbnb. They're not making that money that they used to. And so they're lobbying those municipalities hard, and the municipalities are also hearing from a lot of neighbors with their complaints, about the noise or whatever, that short-term tenants tend to bring when they have their bachelorette parties or their bachelor parties or whatever. And so you'll see that the regulations are very heavy for short-term rentals, but a lot of neighborhoods don't have rules for 30 days or more. So a lot of neighborhoods that are in HOAs and things like that, they allow 30-day rentals or 6-month rentals, but they don't allow short-term rentals. So you're going to see a little less layer of red tape with midterm than you do with short term. You usually get better tenants. This is not always the case, but typically it is. You've got professionals, traveling nurses, relocating people that are, relocating for a job. You also have students sometimes that are on student visas that are not sure where they want to live, or they don't know anything. They've never been in the country. Some people have never been in that state. And so, and then you also have corporations that are paying. So you typically have guaranteed rents because the companies usually pay their bills, whereas Mary and Joe may hit a hard spot and Joe gets laid off, and then now you don't get your rent. So I love the fact that, when I'm renting to a corporation or even a traveling nurse that's on contract, they get a big bonus and they'll pay their rent 6 months in advance or something like that. So I like that about midterm rentals. Some disadvantages: you do have to stage the properties, and you have to stage them a little bit nicer than you do short-term rentals. And when I say nicer, I just mean you're going to have somebody staying in it full time, 3 to 6, 8, 9 months. You can't buy the $300 couch off of Wayfair and think that that's going to be comfortable for a midterm rental client, right? So they're going to want more comfy, cozy, more practical items than you could get away with just on a short-term rental. The other thing too, you need to think about, and you'll see it in my outline below, what does someone who's renting for more than 30 days, what do they need? What is it that they actually need to have in the unit that you wouldn't necessarily need to have in an Airbnb, right? So that might be like a gas grill that you might not provide on an Airbnb, but you would for a longer term tenant. Or maybe the yard needs to be fenced for a pet, which you wouldn't care about for an Airbnb. Or, things that would just make it more comfortable and cozy for a longer term tenant that you don't necessarily care about on a short term. So those might be some kitchen appliances. They might be like, the types of sheets or bedding or towels or whatever you use, or what you're stocking the house with for them, knowing that they're going to be there 6 months. So staging costs are a little bit more expensive, but you actually do need to stage it. A midterm investment does not work if it's not staged. You cannot expect somebody to move their stuff in for 3 months and then move their stuff out. That's not really going to work. That's why you're getting paid the extra money, is because it's already staged. They can bring their toothbrush and a suitcase full of clothes, and that's all they need, right? That's what you're paying. That's what they're paying you the convenience for. I get to use all of your stuff for that time frame. There's a little less flexibility, which means if I put somebody in for 6 months, they're in there for 6 months. I don't, if I have somebody that wanted to book for a week or 2 weeks during a prime event in town, I would lose out on that money because I already have a tenant in place. But there's a little less flexibility with, just think about corporations. They have very rigid rules, and so you're not going to be able to really make all the rules that you would maybe for an individual tenant that you're renting to directly. If you're renting to a corporation, they may make you submit certain paperwork or documentation or follow up with them, monthly or something. But that's going to be depending on who your tenant is. You might have some difficulties in finding tenants. So for example, in the height of COVID, there were nurses traveling on contract from all over the world, right? And so they needed places to stay. That was high demand for traveling nurses for midterm rentals. But that's kind of diminished a little bit. We don't have as much demand for traveling nurses. They still exist, but maybe there's a little bit less demand for certain areas for contractors. So think about in times of a crisis, like a hurricane or a tornado comes through, a midterm rental will really do well with the insurance adjusters, with FEMA, with things like that, because they're looking for places for people to stay. But once the event is over and cleaned up, who's coming to your town, right? Like, so you just have to think about the location of where the unit is, and how easy it is for you to find tenants. In a city like Nashville, you can always find somebody looking for a midterm rental, because people they don't want to commit to a location yet until they know what the place is like. They want to investigate on their own. They might be on a contract assignment. There's so many corporations that bring them in, like Nissan does a contract assignment as well. So you just have to think about, who is this suited for? Who is going to be my tenant? You do have more frequent turnovers than long-term investments. Obviously, it's going to be less than your short-term. But if I put somebody every 3 months, I'm only going to have 4 turnovers a year versus 1 every other week, or 1 every week, or every 3 or 4 days. Versus the long-term, I'm not going to place a new tenant for 12 months. That is good and bad. I have it under my disadvantages, but I'll tell you, as a property manager, having somebody in for a year and you haven't seen that property in a year can be pretty dangerous. You don't know what kind of damage they've done to the property in a year, and sometimes not seeing the inside of the house for a year can be bad. They've done all kinds of damage. Their pets, their kids have done all kinds of things. So midterm investments I like because I can put my eyes on the property a lot more often than a long-term rental. Does that make sense? And then competition, there might be a lot in your market. There may be a lot of midterm rentals already. Competition means you have to be aware of how you price the unit. Are you in line with the rest of your competition, or are you helping rent all the other units because your unit is more expensive than the ones that are around it? And then the changing of regulations is something you always have to stay in tune with. Have they passed any rules or regulations that prohibit you from investing in your property? Now, I'm a realtor, so obviously I believe in property owners' rights. I really don't think the municipality should be able to tell you what you can and cannot do with your property. But also, having lived near Airbnbs, I understand that you have to listen to the complaints that people, and they have the right to enjoy peaceful and quiet enjoyment of their property. So I see it from both sides. But as a realtor, I definitely feel like we need to help our clients protect their property rights. And if they are investors, whether it's short-term, midterm, or long-term, they need to be very aware and stay involved in their neighborhood association, or going to these council meetings where they're debating and talking about changing regulations, because they're impacted. They have a vested interest in the rules that are passed and how that affects their property. So if your client goes and buys a property that they plan on using for midterm rentals, and then the county goes and passes a regulation that says you can't rent for anything less than 12 months, that changes what your client can do with the property. And so your client needs to stay abreast with what kinds of rules are coming. They need to attend those meetings so that they can find out and have a say-so in what happens. When people don't show up, the lobbyists win, right? When property owners don't show up, the lobbyists will always win because they're given the money, right? So your property owners, you just need to make sure you're encouraging your clients. You need to show up for all of these meetings. When you hear about a council meeting, or you hear about they're going to be voting on changes to short-term and midterm rentals, your clients need to show up, and they need to have their voices heard. How do you know if a property is suited for midterm rentals? So obviously, if there's a lot of job growth in the area, if the population demands midterm rentals, if you see a lot of people, for example, in real estate, we come across clients all the time that say, we don't really know what area of town we want to live in. We're considering Hendersonville, but we're also considering Spring Hill. We're thinking about Franklin, but we also are trying to think about Murfreesboro. If you've got someone like that, sometimes suggesting a midterm rental helps them figure out where they want to live, right? You don't have to drive them all over town for a year to help them figure out where they want to live. You might want to suggest, have you thought about living somewhere for 3 months and seeing if you like it there? Have you thought about that? There are agents, I will tell you, when I learned about midterm investing to begin with, there are agents that actually find long-term rentals on the market. They reach out to those owners and offer to place a midterm tenant. They sign a lease with the owner, so the agent is on the hook with the owner. They furnish it, and then they're running a midterm investment business from a listing that was already listed as a long-term rental. Now, that's great if you have some cash, right? Because you have to have money to stage it, and you were on the hook for the lease. But honestly, if there's high demand for midterm rentals in your area, it's a great way for you to make an extra $500 or $1,000 a month, because I want you to think about it. If you sign a lease for $2,200 a month, but I stage it and I rent it for $3,500 a month, what I rent over the $2,200 is profit to me, right? But again, it takes money. It's a risk. You have to market and promote the property. But it is a way, it's called house hacking that people are doing. Kim, tell me what's going on in your head, because I see your face is coming all across your forehead. Like, what were you thinking
Yeah.
there?
Well, like minus the cost of furniture, right?
Correct. Yeah. But that's
And
a
that could be a
one-time
lot.
cost.
That's a lot.
Well, I have
Once you
friends.
buy it, I mean, but then you have to have a place to store it when it's not in a
Yeah.
house.
So yes,
What do people do about that? Do they just have like a warehouse, or they just keep it in their garage, or like what do they do with it?
well, some
I
of them
mean,
keep it in their garage, but a lot of them will rent a storage unit for sure. Is the one thing. And then the other thing is I have friends who have furnished an entire house for less than $7,000. So if they're making $1,500 a month off of the rent and it costs them $7,000 to rent it, and that's a one-time, or $7,000 to
Yeah.
furnish it, that's a one-time expense. If they did 2 or 3 houses, they made their money back, right? So it's just, it is a risk. All investing is a risk. So I want to remind people of that. No matter what type of investment you're making, it's a risk. But I'm telling you that I have seen, and why I'm mentioning it to you is that I have seen agents who have taken a long-term lease and turned it into a midterm lease and pocketed the difference between what they paid in the rent versus what they rented it out. So for
Well, I
example,
mean,
go ahead.
that sounds so doable.
It is doable.
You know, like compared to investing it, like purchasing a house. If something is sitting on the market because people don't like it or whatever, rental, I mean,
Yeah.
that sounds so, doesn't sound hard at all.
No, the only risk is you are responsible for the rent because you signed the lease if you
Sure.
don't find a tenant for it, right? So I mean,
Sure.
I get that part, but the reality is that the likelihood that you're going to find a tenant is a lot higher than the vacancy rate you're going to have, right? And even if you
For
found a
sure. And you
tenant
just
for
have to make sure that you vet them really well.
yeah. And if you had a tenant for 3 or 6 months, whatever you make off of that, if you're smart, you would squirrel away so that if you had a month that was vacant, you had the money to pay the rent. You know, it's not going to affect your family. You could still eat. You know what I mean? But it is definitely, I'm watching agents all over North Carolina doing it, in cities like Raleigh and Charlotte. And here's the other thing: as an agent, I want you to think about, you have a client that comes in from out of town that doesn't know where they want to live yet. Your value add is you can come stay in my midterm rental until you figure out where you want to live, right? That's an added bonus that you have this property that you could use, that, hey, I could let you stay here. And then you get to figure out, there's an agent, she's an EXP agent. I'm trying to remember. Amanda Williams is her name. And she talks all about house hacking, midterm investing. She teaches agents how to do what we're talking about right now. And one of the things that she puts on her website is live like a local program, right? Live like a local. And she has a house that's fully furnished that she allows her, she doesn't give it to them, but she allows her clients who are relocating to the area to move into one of her midterm investment properties to try out the various neighborhoods that they're considering, or the areas of town that they're considering. Think about how genius that is, right?
That's brilliant. That's awesome.
I think it's brilliant.
But that's service, right? It's like,
that is service.
you
And
have a need, I have a solution.
well, that's just it. When you guys stop trying to be salespeople and you start focusing on solving the problems that consumers have. The problem is I don't know where I want to live. The problem is I don't want to commit to buying something until I know, but I also don't want to sign a year lease. I have a solution for that, right? When you start solving the problems that they have or the concerns that they have, you all of a sudden became a valuable piece to the equation, right? You are needed, not just something I can jump online and say, oh, I mean, I can go find a rental. That's not easy to find a rental. It's not easy to find a furnished rental. And you still don't know the area or the neighborhood, right? So that's where your value comes in. But I'm just telling you, there are possibilities. It all comes with a risk, but you're taking a risk no matter what you invest in, right? If I invest in a short-term rental, they can change those policies tomorrow and I could be out an income producing opportunity, and then stuck with a property I might also not be able to sell, right? It's just a lot safer for me. A midterm investing is a lot safer than a short-term rental. It comes with its pros and cons, but I think it's a better option for a lot of people. And it's an opportunity to make money as an agent that is pretty easy to pull off without having to invest a whole lot of money. You get to furnish it. That's it, right? This specifically also works in very desirable vacation spots. So think like lakes, rivers, like Center Hill Lake, what like all the lakes where there are, like, if you're trying to rent it for the summer to a snowbird, think about people like that, people from Michigan or Illinois or wherever they're coming from, where they're trying to escape the brutal winter, and maybe they're going to Florida or wherever, and you have a house that they can rent for 3 or 4 months. They don't, that's going to be a little better for them than an Airbnb, right? It just depends on the area. Let's see, properties. I told you properties that work best. A lot of furnished apartments actually work really well because they're highly amenitized. So think they've got big gyms, they have workspace, they have like meeting rooms, they have like a coffee bar, whatever. Those typically work pretty well for midterm investing, but so do your condos that have some amenities as well. But I will tell you, I find the most money is made on single family homes in neighborhoods that have a community pool or a gym or amenities, something like that. But a single family home, if you're taking the aspect that I just talked about, like you don't know where you want to live and what part of town, the Live Like a Local program is going to be easy for you to find people that they're considering living there, but they're not sure what it would be like to live there. You have a solution for that. Proximity to restaurants and businesses is also very important. So a house like mine in the middle of nowhere that's 25 minutes to the grocery store is not going to be suitable for a midterm or a short-term rental kind of situation, right? Unless someone's looking for an escape or a getaway or a place that's for a retreat or something like that. But that's not typically the people who are midterm rentals. They're on a work contract. They need to be close to work. And these are areas that they're thinking or considering and living. We talked about the negotiating deals. That's where I was going to talk to you about the example about negotiating a lease, you paying you being responsible for the lease and then renting it out to whoever you want to. Online platforms to find tenants. Obviously there's Airbnb, there's VRBO. Furnished Finder is a big one. That's where all the traveling nurses use typically. A lot of corporations use that as well. But there's also corporatehousing.com and booking.com sometimes has furnished rentals as well. And I'm sure there's a list of like 20 others that you could look at, but those are the most popular ones that I see midterm investing houses on. So again, I told you about staging and presentation tips. It should be, think about, okay, yes, it's a place when you furnish it, this all works for 3 or 4 days, but does this work for 60, 90, 120 days, right? So is the sofa comfortable? Are the beds comfortable? Are your linens comfortable? Or is this like hotel grade, below hotel grade, where you furnish the whole thing on Facebook Marketplace and it's ugly as sin and nothing matches and the couch, you sit on it once and it's going to break kind of thing. But what does someone who's renting for more than 30 days need? Sometimes I've rented Airbnbs where there's no colander, to drain pasta. There's no, there are no, oven mitts. Those kinds of things are the things you need to think about. If you're living in a house for more than 3 or 5 days, what else do you need? What other things can make it comfortable and feel like home? When you compare midterm to short-term and long-term rentals, I told you rental rates for short-term rentals are typically higher on a per night basis compared to midterm or long-term, but on average, short-term rentals can be 1.5 to 2 times more expensive on a per night basis than midterm rentals. It just depends too, again, if I'm renting to a corporate, oh yes, Bonnie said her sister's a travel nurse or was, and blackout curtains are a must. I will agree with that if people are on a job. And then don't be afraid to ask your tenant, is there anything I can get that you don't have that would make your stay more comfortable? Right? Blackout curtains are 100% a must if someone's working third shift or someone's working like a nursing shift or fire department or something like that, where, you know, they need to sleep during the night or during the day. Blackout curtains are going to be really important. And then you're just setting your tenant expectations. You know, when you are a short-term renter, you don't want to interact with the owner of the property at all unless something is wrong. You don't really want to need them for anything. Midterm rental, you may just want to check in on your people. How is everything? Do you need anything? Can I get you anything to make your stay more enjoyable? Remember, they're paying premium dollars, so you want to cater to them almost like a concierge. Can I recommend restaurants? Can I, you know, is there anything I can get you that you need? Maybe drop off, you know, something that would help them, whatever that is. But setting your tenant expectations or understanding how they're different is kind of important. Income stability, like I said, someone who is doing a midterm rental, typically they have that extra money to spend for the convenience. They want something that's already furnished. We're going to live here for 6 months while they're finishing building our house, and we know it's going to cost us more money monthly. A lot of times they've already sold their house, so they may have cash sitting around, so you're not waiting for it month after month. Or if their corporation is paying for it, they may pay for it 6 months in advance. So you may get your money faster, which to me is more income stability. And then you just property management requirements. You know, what is going to be involved from your aspect if you're the agent? If you're helping your client buy a midterm rental, are they going to hire a manager? Is it something they're expecting you to help them with? If this is not your wheelhouse, don't offer to help them manage it if you don't know what you're doing. You know, set the expectations right up front that if your investor is looking to buy something like that, they should already go ahead and budget for hiring a management company. And the other thing about a management company is that they're beholden. They only get paid when you actually get a booking. So I love the fact that when you hire a property management company for your short-term and midterm rentals, you know, they have an incentive to help share the listing, promote and market the listing, because they don't get paid if you don't get a booking, right? Some of them get paid per booking, some get paid per month. But I like the fact that they're also responsible for helping you find tenants. That's the thing I like about it. What you can do as a realtor to better assist your midterm clients, obviously your clients need you to have market expertise. They need you to know what are the best neighborhoods and types that would work for midterm rentals. Excuse me. And they're relying on your advice to help identify them the best properties that are going to have the highest or the lowest vacancy rates. They're going to have to, you know, you're going to have to help them select the best properties. So property condition, properties that don't need a lot of maintenance, ones that have a lot of amenities. That's something you can help them with. You also can help give them pricing strategies and how to be competitive. You could do some research on what the rental rates in the area are. Certainly, you can take the long-term rental rate if something is for rent for a long-term lease, and you can pretty much, you know, multiply that times 1.5, and that's going to be your monthly rental for a midterm. Usually, don't quote me all the time in every location for that, but in Nashville specifically, if the house rents for $2,500 a month on a long-term lease, I probably could get 38 or 4 for it on a midterm rental. Okay. They might need help screening their tenants. You can give them resources for where they could do that. They may need some legal guidance. You may want to have a midterm rental lease drafted. Do not use any of your state association lease agreements for that. That's not for that, and you don't give those to your clients anyway. But you may want to connect them with an attorney to draft a lease. That's some value that you could provide to them. Again, giving them resources for property management. You can help them market and promote their listing. So again, anytime one of my clients buys an Airbnb, I'm always going to post the link to help them get bookings. You know, I'm going to offer, you know, or promote that listing to the Airbnb to my network so that I can help them get bookings for it. maybe get a furnishing consultation. So maybe get a designer or a stager to come in and help you pick. There are companies out there that will help you furnish it. And they already have packages available. So they have different packages based on the budget and based on the property, that they already know exactly what you need. It's a done for you one-stop shop. And you contact these people and they say, for this amount of money, I can furnish the whole house. Some people would rather do that option than the other. I think it's fun to shop for housing decor, but for some people that's overwhelming. And some people, they don't know how to make the rooms flow together, or they like shopping. Oh, that poor baby. Is that Sadie? Is that the one you're rehoming, or is that the other one? Oh. So but you know, for some people, a one-stop shop like that is very helpful to them. They can hire this person to just consult with them. They buy the package directly from them and let them take care of it. Other people are very thrifty. They like shopping. They want to pick out all the things for their rental themselves. But I will tell you, you're going to go over budget, because the things that you like are probably more expensive than the things that this person is picking out, right? So, oh man. Negotiation skills, if you need some help negotiating the lease agreements or any terms with corporations, you might be able to help them with that. Giving them ongoing support, any solutions that might arise during the lease. You know, again, your clients probably are going to need plumbers, HVAC people, maybe an electrician. Just think of some generic resources that your clients might need if they are going to have a rental or an investment property like this. Who do they need to have in their arsenal? Tenant relations, again, you want to get the best reviews. How you get future bookings is to get the best reviews. So you want to encourage your client, if it's a client or if you're managing it, you want to encourage that they get the best reviews that they can, because that's how people look at it to evaluate whether or not they want to book it. Sometimes too, when you're just getting started, this is a probably common sense one, but I'll mention it to you anyway. If you're just getting started and you don't have a lot of reviews yet, you can offer to let people stay in it to write you a review. So, hey, I'll give you a couple nights in my rental if you'll write me a great review, just to help yourself get started. You can do financial analysis for your clients to help them determine what the profitability would be. So you can show them, based on a worst case scenario with the vacancy rate, how much they could actually net to help them decide if a midterm rental is for them. Networking is a great way to help them find tenants. So if you want to go to networking events and promote, hey, I have this property available. So think about if you're at a networking event and there's companies there that are represented that have a lot of contract workers or have people that come in, like customers or clients that come in just for a project. You know, a midterm rental might be a great resource for them. And so you want to share that with them as well. You just want to stay informed on market trends and how things change, especially the local regulations. And then the last part is just helping your client develop an exit strategy. So let's say that midterm rentals no longer are a thing, or your client decides this isn't for me. I've made enough money off of it, but now I want to get rid of it. You just always want to have a solution for how do you get out of it. So do you sell it as a business? Do you sell the property? You know, if you rented it from another owner, what would that end of that relationship look like? But you just want to help them develop an exit strategy to be able to get out of the rental if they need. Questions for me about midterm rental, or something that I didn't cover that is going through your brain now?
I have a question.
Sure.
With respect to financial analysis,
Yeah.
like I can make a spreadsheet, but are there easier ways to do that are more out of the box kind of solutions?
Well, some of these property management companies are going to have their own products that they can give to clients to help them evaluate, or internal software that they use to evaluate and run financials. I will tell you this. I like to give just enough to be dangerous, but then refer them to a professional if they need something better than that. because I don't want to be liable for running analysis for them that showcases this much profitability. And for whatever reason, they don't make that money. Whatever reason it's priced incorrectly. They didn't market enough. They had a lot of vacancies. And then now they're looking at what I told them that they can make versus what they actually made. And now they're disappointed. Right. So I always like take a step back and just say, I'm happy to give you what a worst case scenario might be, but remember, it's just an estimate. And there are a lot of factors that are going to vary or be variables to how much money you're actually going to make. And I would actually put the onus on another company that is legitimately has the ability to forecast that stuff for them, and let them pay for that versus us stepping into something that's really not our wheelhouse or our expertise that's opening us up to more liability. Right. So I can talk intelligently all day long about rental rates. I can even talk about midterm rates based on what I know the market will bear. But as far as projecting how much money you're going to potentially make, I don't know what your operating costs are, to be honest with you. I don't know I can estimate utilities. I can estimate management fees. I can estimate repairs, but that year, the water heater and the HVAC may go out. You might need a new roof. There might be an assessment from the HOA. There's all kinds of things that are going to impact it. I just don't want to take on that kind of liability for offering those kind of analyses. The analysis I want to stick to is let's talk about pricing and let me connect you with the resources that I think you need to actually get it rented or to have more information. But that's not going to come from me. It's going to come from a professional that you're going to probably pay for.
Do you know of any websites that are like AirDNA, but for midterm investing?
No, but I will find one for you because I know who has them. But I personally don't. I haven't looked like had to give that. I just kind of referred them to someone else that probably referred them to them. But I'll see if I can find it for you. Okay.
Oh.
Let me make a note before I forget because I'm old and you know how that goes.
How about any books about midterm investing?
Yes, I'll send you a link for that too. I almost wrote resources because I had a feeling if you were going to be on the call, you were going to want more resources. But I ran out of time. So, but I will look for you for additional resources. I will also connect you with Amanda Williams because again, she is an expert in this. Don't let her try to recruit you to EXP, but she is an expert in short and midterm rental. She teaches people all over the country how to house hack doing it. And so I will connect you with her just so that you can at least have another go-to. I'm sure a lot of her knowledge is in some digital course she's trying to sell you or something like that, but you might be able to scan enough on her website to learn a lot more than you know now, you know.
Okay.
So,
yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else have any questions or comments? Like, was this a little helpful at least to understand an option? Again, I'd always just want you to have a full toolbox in the event that somebody comes to you. And in an area where you guys live right now in Nashville, you got to be prepared for something like this because, you know, we don't just sell residential real estate. We've got clients that have all kinds of needs, and some of those are outside of the box. Some of those are a little different. I just at least want you to know enough about them to talk intelligently about, hey, I know that this is an opportunity for you, and let's talk about what that might look like. You don't have to be an expert in it, but I want you to at least be available, like knowledgeable enough to know that this is available and how it differs from short-term or long-term rentals. The other part, like I said, you know, one day if you got money, you may want to try negotiating the lease and see how much money monthly can I mean, $1,500 a month is a pretty nice nut, you know, to just for furnishing a house. You know, you just got to find the right property. But if you're going to invest $10,000 in something, I can't think of another investment that you're going to get that kind of return on. Does it have a risk? Yes, but $1,500 or more a month, that reward is a lot. You know, that pays a mortgage for a lot of people. So, yeah.
I did have another question. How does this differ from, like, if you're using one of these websites that's not Airbnb,
Okay.
do you have to have your own lease? Like, does Furnished Finders have, like, you know, when you're getting on Airbnb as a consumer, you book stuff through Airbnb and then the owner gets paid by Airbnb.
Yeah, so Furnish Finder is going to work like that too, where they take a percentage of your bookings. They're going to work like that. Corporatehousing.com doesn't necessarily work like that. They're just going to be listings with you connect the people directly. And there are going to be other websites like that. I would imagine if you had your own website for your property, people could book directly through you and you can save some of those fees. But again, it's almost like, people go to Airbnb because it's so popular and people know about it. Like, why reinvent the wheel? Like, you could increase your bookings because it's going to have more traffic on it and more eyes on it. And yeah, you're going to pay a fee for it, right? It just depends on, how good you are at marketing your property and keeping people in it. But these sites like Airbnb and VRBO and all of those, yes, they're going to take a percentage of your bookings.
And you don't have to have a separate lease.
Well, I'm going to encourage you to have a separate lease no matter what. And there's the reason why, because none of those, when you just book through Airbnb, even if you book for a midterm, like 6 months, if that person doesn't move out, you are not protected by the law to evict them, right? You don't have a written lease, and everyone's going to go back to what does the contract say? That's what the judge is going to say. What is your right as the property owner in evicting people or damages or anything like that? I don't want to be beholden to that company. I want to have my own lease in place and my own rules and regulations so that I can then enforce them, right?
Okay.
When you are booking through an Airbnb or a Furnish Finder or something like that, they are taking on the liability. That's why they're taking the fees, but you don't have the protection that you need as a property owner. So even if you book through those, I would have a separate lease that is for 6 months or 9 months and what that entails and what that looks like, so that if you have damage or if you need to evict, you have a legally binding contract that you can take to court. I don't know what you take to court if you book through your VRBO or whatever, Home Finder or whatever it is, right? So I would always recommend that you have your own lease drafted by an attorney. Don't use LegalZoom or, any of these online, like, oh, I can do it for $19 or $29. It's just not worth it. It's just not worth it. Just have an attorney draft it for you and make sure they've protected you on all fronts. And it's according to the laws of your state that are in line with what the eviction policies are. So again, even if you're doing long-term property management, there are a lot of people that use just the regular, TAR lease that we have available to us in our documents and forms, but there's not things built in that lease that I think are favorable to a property owner. So for example, I want you to waive your right of notice so that I can take you right to eviction court. If you are 2 months behind on your rent, I want to be able to take you to court right away. And there's things in that lease that are not in favor of the property owner. And I think you don't have to use that lease. You can develop your own. So protect yourself. Always have your own. I think if it's more than 30 days, you should have your own agreement. Good question. All right. Anybody else? Anything else? Was it helpful at least to understand a little bit more about it? Cool. Next week, we are doing my favorite, contract to close. Did you see my eye roll? I don't think I could have rolled them back of my head further. But contract to close for me is very important. A lot of agents are never trained properly on how to do contract to close. They just, get something under contract and someone tells them what to do, but they don't really have good training on how to properly do contract to close. The other thing is there's tons of people out there that you can hire to do it, but I don't think you should hire someone to do something that you don't know how to do yourself. You can't hold somebody accountable for something that you don't know how to do, or at least what to expect. And so what I'm going to teach you next week is the various steps of contract to close, what to say to whom, and how to improve your contract to close to make sure things don't slip through the cracks. A lot of that is using a checklist, which I'm going to share with you. And then some pre-saved communications that you can just go click on it and send it. And you don't have to rewrite this every time you get something under contract. So there's some systems in place that you can put in place, a checklist that you can follow to make sure nothing slips through the cracks. And it's going to lead to a much smoother transaction if you follow that than, you know, just trying to orchestrate everything to get to the close. So that's what we're going to talk about next week. Bonnie said that was awesome. My sister and I were thinking of jumping into midterm investing because of her experience in travel nursing. Perfect. I'm glad that you were able to jump on, and I'm glad it was helpful. Thanks for always being my loyal people that show up. I appreciate that very much. Otherwise, I do a lot of prep work. It takes me a lot to prepare for these classes. I have to make sure that I can talk intelligently enough to you, get resources gathered, do a, you know, create an outline for you to follow. And so I appreciate you guys showing up. I hope it helps you. My goal is to always just give you more tools to make you a better agent. And then also to educate you on things that you might not know about. So go out there in the world this week and go sell some stuff. And continue making me proud. Super happy that you guys are here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Welcome. Bye, darling.